I say let him go. I say let him go. No, not the guy we deported. I say the Democrats, let him go. If they want to go to a high security prison in El Salvador that's populated by the meanest, most disgusting, vile human beings in the entire world, I say send them. If Kristi Noem can go, then obviously the Democrats can go too. What's up? This is Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, man. And I'm having a great day today so far. First of all, a couple of really great things have happened. Another bonus, by the way, another thing that I realized about this late start time that we have at 1 p.m. is that about 1 p.m. or a little, shortly after is when Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, usually begins her press briefings. So we have the added benefit of actually catching a lot of the press briefings live. And whenever there's a press briefing, I'm going to be honest with you, I'll probably just pop in and we could, we do a little pop in like they used to do on Seinfeld. Oh, the pop in. I hate the pop in. But we can do a little pop in and we could find out what's going on with the press secretary, what they're talking about today, because I imagine they have a lot of important things going on. So that's the first really exciting thing that happens with this new later start time. But the other great thing that's happening is we seem to have a lot more people watching, which is great. We have a lot more people watching. We have a lot more people tuning in. We have a lot more people listening. Look at this. This is, and again, not to brag, because this is not me. This is all you guys. I'm actually bragging on you because you guys are the ones responsible for this. But look at the podcast charts. I just checked them this morning, and I have to tell you, I am totally floored. Look at this. We are 29th. We're 29 on the political podcast chart, which is bravo to you. We've been floundering around in the upper 100s, but now we're finally making the headway we need, and we are moving up the charts, and we are this close. And if you're listening to the podcast, if you're listening on iTunes or Google, or not Google anymore because they're gone, but Spotify or iHeartRadio, wherever you happen to be listening, I'm holding my thumb and my index finger like as close as humanly possible without them actually touching. That's what I'm doing right now, just to verbally illustrate what's happening, and that's how close we are to the top 10. So thank you so much for downloading the podcast. If you haven't yet done it, if you haven't subscribed, now would be the perfect time to do so, because we want to continue this growth pattern. We want to continue to get more Kayetriots logged in every single day, downloading the podcast every single day, learning and listening and understanding and becoming part of the entire cause, because the cause is important. The cause is saving the Republic. And that's why we call this Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. But it's not just me, it's all of us cumulatively. So we've got hundreds of thousands of people that watch us every single day on YouTube and on Rumble and on Facebook. And if you're watching there, again, like and share, set the notification bell. The notification bell is your best friend, because sometimes, you know what happens? Sometimes you're busy. Sometimes you're not sure what's going on. You're running around. Maybe you're waiting in line for your coffee or your Big Mac, whatever it is. Sometimes the kids are screaming at you, or the spouse. And you just lose track of time. But if you've got that notification bell, then, all of a sudden, ding, they're going to let you know, hey, it's time for Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, and you're never going to miss it. So make sure you do that right now. Oh, and my Facebook peeps, please share this, because Facebook's good and bad. Facebook does this thing where they really love us one day, and then the next day they're like, we're kind of over you. They're like hot and cold. They're very bipolar. But we definitely want to keep sharing on Facebook, because it is a very large audience. It's a very I guess information hungry audience, and we want to make sure that we're feeding them the appropriate diet of information. None of that fake processed BS propaganda CNN crap. You got to feed yourself, just like your body. Just like RFK Jr. would tell you, you need to feed your body some healthy stuff. No, hydrogenated vegetable oils, no trans fats, none of that kind of stuff. Nothing, no dyes. With the dyes. You got to feed your mind helpings of healthy, real truth. And that's what we have here. This is good. If your mind is hungry for knowledge and truth and justification and information, then this is the place to be. And we want to make sure that you're here every single day. So again, subscribe, like, share those notifications so that we can continue. Look, one day I'm gonna hit this and it's gonna just say number 1, bing. Sorry, Candace Owens. Sorry, Candace. We're coming for Clay and Buck, by the way. Don't think we're not. Don't think we're hot on the tail of Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, and we're coming for them. It's my mission in life now is to have the number 1 podcast in the entire world. I think it's pretty good. Well, that's the first mission, and then we're going to use that to catapult ourselves into the realm of politics. Anyway, listen, there's a lot going on today that we have to get to. First of all, one thing that I did want to mention, and I guess I don't know if we start. I don't know if we're going to start with the Democrats wanting to go to El Salvador, but
vamos a hacer América.
Pardon me. Let me share this with you because this is all right. Well, this is kind of funny. President Donald Trump was being interviewed by somebody. Let me see who this is again. Here we go. This is let's see, Rachel from Fox Noticias, which I think means Fox News. Fox Noticias. This is Rachel, and I guess she's speaking with President Donald Trump in the White House, and she's giving him a Spanish lesson. Listen, this is her teaching President Donald Trump how to say "Make America Great Again" in Spanish. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go.
Mr. President, I'd like to teach you how to say "Let's make America great again" in Spanish. So, vamos a hacer América grande otra vez.
America grande otra vez.
Mr. President, I'd like to teach you how to say "Let's make America great again" in Spanish. So, vamos a hacer América grande otra vez.
America grande otra vez.
Yeah, that's excelente. Excelente, señor presidente. Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. But that is, I don't know what the whole point of that is, but it made me giggle. But it's interesting and it's important because there's a lot going on with this. Oh man, there's a lot going on with this dude, Garcia. His name is, what's his name? His name's Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who they continue to refer to as a Maryland man. He's just a Maryland man. He's just this innocent Maryland man. And Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice, Attorney General, that's what she's called. Pam Bondi was on with Jesse Waters, and she put to rest she was like, look, folks, I hate to break it to you, but this dude we're not going to call him a Maryland man anymore. That is a media fallacy that needs to be put to bed. That is something that we no longer want. This is a narrative that we're not going to perpetuate. This guy was not a Maryland man. He's not even an American. In order to be a Maryland man, you have to be an American first. Well, I guess you're a Maryland man first, but then if you're a Maryland man, you're American and you're allowed to stay here. This guy's an El Salvadoran hombre.
You know, when you're listening to all these liberal reporters, they keep calling him a Maryland man. He's not a Maryland man. He's part of a foreign terrorist organization. He's a member of MS-13 who, as you laid out in your monologue, came to this country and committed just gang acts. He was caught, and two judges, an immigration judge and an appellate judge, ruled that he was an MS-13 member, as well as ICE's testimony. Yet his attorneys are saying he's not affiliated with the gang. They're wrong, and he has no right to be there. But for an extra step in paperwork, just like you said, he would go right back to El Salvador, which is his home country, where he belongs. And President Bukele does not want to give him back to the United States, nor do we want him back.
Right, so
I mean, it's really weird to me. You've got this guy, right? And he's clearly here illegally, and he's clearly an MS-13 gang member, and he gets deported to El Salvador. And all of a sudden, everybody on the left is up in arms. The media, the Democrats, they're all like, we want him back. And we're like, why? Why do we want, we're trying our darndest to get these people out of the country so that we all remain safe. And El Salvador, he's an El Salvadoran citizen. So he goes there, we reunite him with his home country, and all of a sudden you'd have thunk it was, who was that kid from Cuba? That Janet Reno, Elian Gonzalez. I don't know if that's a throwback jam, by the way, but Elian Gonzalez, this is like the second Elian Gonzalez case. Only this isn't a little cute kid. This is an MS-13 gang member who's in El Salvador, and Bukele is like, look, I'm not going to release him. He's a terrorist. He's in prison. He's going to stay in prison. He's also not an American. So I'm not going to be able to bring him back to the United States of America. And by the way, President Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and everyone else are like, hello, we don't want him. No quieres, no queremos, whatever it is. We don't want the guy. That's why we sent him away in the first place. We're not looking to keep these people here. We're looking to evacuate them from our country so that our country is super safe. And so far, so good. We got a secure border. We're getting rid of all these gang members and all these thugs and these murderers and these drug dealers. It's going great for us. But the Democrats, for whatever reason, they're not happy. In fact, the Democrats are so mad that they're planning a rescue operation. They're going to go to El Salvador and they're going to try to spring this guy out of Seco. I don't even know what you call the prison, but that big prison. You've seen it on the videos. You've seen it on the Instagram posts. You remember that night that they flew all those criminal aliens to El Salvador and they dropped them and they had the rock music in the background and they put them on the vans and it was really cinematically very well done. They took them, they shaved all their heads. Which, by the way, some of them had. I got to teach those people how to shave heads because a lot of those criminals still had some fuzz left. You got to get really tight. You got to get really close to the scalp. But anyway, they threw them in the penitentiary, and there they are in their white clothing, crying for their mamas. You remember that. Well, now there's Democrats that are going to go to El Salvador, and they're going to try to get this guy released. They're going to go on some kind of Mission Impossible journey to spring him from prison. They want to like Shawshank Redemption this guy from, like Escape from Alcatraz, but it's going to be Escape from El Salvador. And they're led by Maryland. This guy's ridiculous. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who, let me see if I can find this. I know that I pinned it. Here it is. Chris Van Hollen, who, this guy was a representative until he wasn't anymore. Now he's a senator. But Chris Van Hollen is talking to CNN, of course, and he's saying basically, we're going to go. The Democrats, we're going to El Salvador. We're going to find this guy. We're going to find him, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and we're going to make sure he's okay and do everything we can to try to bring him back. Listen to this.
To see Abrego Garcia, to let him know that his family and friends are very worried about him, as am I. I think that the situation for both the Trump administration and the president of El Salvador is unsustainable because the Supreme Court, as you reported, by 9-0, has said the Trump administration has to facilitate his return. And you have the president of El Salvador saying, well, I don't have the power to release him. Both things are untrue. The president could, of course, facilitate his return. After all, the United States is paying El Salvador money for this prison. And of course, the president of El Salvador could release him. So at some point, I think this becomes unsustainable. People are going to keep calling for his release because the Trump administration itself has admitted he was wrongfully whisked out of the country. And we have a 9-0 decision from the Supreme Court.
This is very important, obviously.
Obviously, it's so important. So Chris Van Hollen is saying, I'm going to go to El Salvador. I'm going to check on him. I'm going to let him know. I'm going to let his family know that he's okay. He's not okay. He's in a prison, dude. You're not going to like what you see. But he said this is unsustainable for the Trump administration because they're going to cave to public pressure. Is that true? They're going to cave. That Donald Trump now all of a sudden after 45 some odd years of being President Donald Trump, this guy's not going to cave to public pressure, especially from the Democrats, especially from a vocal minority of people who think that you should allow illegal immigrant criminals to roam our streets free and do whatever, commit whatever crimes they want. He's not the only one though. Look, Democratic lawmakers say they'll travel to El Salvador to push for Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release. Senator Chris Van Hollen said if the Maryland man whom the administration acknowledged mistakenly deporting was not back in the U.S. by midweek, that's tomorrow, the senator would travel to El Salvador. That's not it, though. There's more. Democratic lawmakers, led by Senator Chris Van Hollen, say they're willing to go to El Salvador to seek the release of a man who the Justice Department says it mistakenly deported there. Van Hollen sent a letter Monday to El Salvador's ambassador in the U.S. requesting a meeting with the country's president, Nayib Bukele, who said in meeting with President Donald Trump later in the day that he, of course, would not send Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident, back to the U.S. In a statement on Monday, Van Hollen said if Abrego Garcia was not in the U.S. by midweek, he would travel. He would travel there. That's not it there. Here it is. Listen to this. We must all stand as a united front against the kidnapping and illegal detention of Kilmar Abrego Garcia in El Salvador, Progressive Representative Maxwell Frost, Democrat Florida, said in a post on X. Now, by the way, Maxwell Frost is not progressive. This guy's a lunatic socialist. This is the guy, he's young, he's like 20 years old. He took over Val Deming's spot. He's the guy that was yelling and screaming and had to be removed almost from his hearing in the House of Representatives because he kept calling Elon Musk the president and Donald Trump a grifter. Anyway, I'm El Salvador senator. I am willing to join you and help organize other members of the House to do the same. This is fantastic news. Look at this. Representative Yasemin Ansari from Arizona reshared Frost's posts, writing that she was ready to join her colleagues in traveling to El Salvador to demand Abrego Garcia's release. I say let them all go. Let's send the whole gosh darn Democrat caucus. Let's send them all. Here's Maxwell Frost, okay? So it starts off with his letter. All right, here we go. This is the letter that Chris Van Hollen sent to Ambassador Mayorga. I write to urgently request a meeting with President Bukele during his current visit to the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Mr. Abrego Garcia was wrongly deported to a prison in El Salvador on Saturday evening in a court filing to a federal judge in Maryland. The Trump administration confirmed that he's being held in El Salvador's terrorism confinement center. A senior official, blah, 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 blah. I have met with Mr. Abrego Garcia's wife, mother, and brother, and as you can imagine, they are extremely worried about his health, safety, and continued illegal confinement, as I am. I look forward to your response. So he writes this letter, and he goes, look, I'm going to go out there. Maxwell Frost says, we must stand together. I'm willing to join you. And then this other lunatic, Yasemin Ansari, the youngest woman in Congress, fighting for people and a better future, proudly representing Arizona's 3rd. She's like, I'm going to go too. Well, let's all go. We need answers now. I'm ready to join Senator Van Hollen for Maryland and my colleagues, Maxwell Frost. Oh, Robert Garcia is going to go too. Oh, fantastic. Robert Garcia is from California. That's great. We got California. We got an Arizona Democrat. We got crazy Maxwell Frost, and we've got Chris Van Hollen, who's basically a do-nothing for Maryland. Let's get AOC in on this. Let's get Jasmine Crockett. She would love, I imagine, to go to El Salvador. Let's Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, the whole gosh darn squad. We should just put them on a plane, send them to El Salvador, and then accidentally forget to fly them home. I think that would be prime. But they're willing to go. And I guess I don't know what they think they're going to do. I don't know what they think they're going to be able to accomplish that nobody else has been able to accomplish. They're going to go to El Salvador, and because they're Democrats in the House of Representatives or in the Congress, they're going to be able to, they're going to change Bukele's mind. The president was sitting there in the Oval Office. The media was saying, hey, are you guys going to let this guy go? And Bukele goes, absolutely not. He called the question, I'd like to point out, he called the question preposterous, if you don't recall. In fact, I will play it for you again too, because it was one of the greatest answers. It was one of the greatest answers any president has ever given to any CNN reporter, and it came from President Bukele. Here it is. You want me to smuggle? You want me to smuggle a terrorist into the U.S.?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a
I don't know what it is with Democrats and criminals. I guess they like birds of a feather stick together, right? Is that it? It's like one for all and all for one. So all these criminals in the Democrat Party, all these criminals who are corrupt and who are insider traders and God knows what else they've done, they're like, look, we got to stick with our own kind. So instead of protecting the law-abiding citizens of the United States of America, they're going to try to liberate criminal terrorists from prisons in El Salvador and bring them back within our borders. It's really, really, again, just because they lost the election doesn't mean that they gained any common sense. Just remember that. The Democrats lost the election, but they did not gain any common sense. In fact, they're doubling down on this insanity. A lot of them are like, look, we want to continue to be crazy. We want to continue to be lunatics, and we're going to continue to fight you in all these really dumb ways. Representative Lara Friedman, who's from, where's she from? She's from California. She also admitted, yesterday I played you this clip from, what's his name, Norm Eisen, who worked for Barack Obama. Norm Eisen basically said, look, here's the whole thing. All right, here's what we're doing. We know what's happening, and we've planned. We plan to sue Donald Trump 100 times at least. Every time Donald Trump does something, every time he wakes up and goes to work, every time he signs an executive order, we've got lawyers ready to just litigate the crap out of this. We're gonna sue him 6 ways till Sunday. Is that the saying? 6 ways till Sunday? Something like that. It's a weird saying anyway, but it's something like that. And that was premeditated from long before the election and just after the inauguration. The Democrats, as soon as they realized that Joe Biden wasn't their candidate and Kamala Harris was, they started an army of attorneys and they started putting together all of the lawsuits for all the things Donald Trump was saying he was going to do. And now they're executing on that plan. And Norm Eisen is letting everybody know about it.
The lawsuits we're bringing, I'm planning 100 this year.
Look at how excited this guy is too. I'm planning 100 this year. Look at that. Ooh, 100 lawsuits. This guy is demented, man. He's so into suing Donald Trump that he doesn't even care if he has a case. He just wants to do it.
This year, 100. The lawsuits we're bringing are designed as part of that. And it's starting to work because you can't do it in the courts of law alone. You need the court of public opinion. And what did we see this week in parallel with our Treasury lawsuit, that first Treasury case? Peaceful protesters for the first time starting to show up at the Treasury building around.
Yeah, they're not peaceful. They're paid protesters. He got the wrong P word. He said peaceful protesters. What he meant was paid protesters. Well, he's not the only one. Look at this. This is what's her name from California. And she's Laura Friedman from California is basically saying the same gosh darn thing, that they don't care. They don't care what's right or what's wrong. They are just going to sue Donald Trump as often as they can.
Every single week, we have a litigation working group where a large group of us, and I'm talking there's maybe 75 members of the House, sit down every single week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy. This is all going on every single week behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, look at this, 75. She said 75. They have 70. These are elected representatives. These are people that you're paying their salary. All right. These are the representatives from all these blue states, all these crazy sanctuary cities. 75 of them get together in a room and they plan legal strategy, which is code word for how are we going to sue to stop President Donald Trump this week? That's what they're wasting your time and money on.
Every single week, we have a litigation working group where a large group of us, and I'm talking there's maybe 75 members of the House, sit down every single week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy. This is all going on every single week behind the scenes. It is nonstop talk, nonstop introduction of bills and legislation, nonstop being on social media as much as we can without being throttled and without the, crazy analytics and doing all these things.
All right. So this woman is saying, look, here's what we do. We in the House of Representatives, duly elected individuals that are paid for by the taxpayers, we are going behind closed doors with attorneys general from all of these states. All the AGs come in. So it should actually be A's G because it's attorneys general. So it wouldn't be AGs, it'd be A's G. So all of the A's G from all these Democrat states come in and they meet with all of these Democrat lawmakers and they strategize how to stop Donald Trump via lawfare. They strategize. They have litigators in there, 75 people. This is what they're doing when they should be, working on the budget.
Every single week we have
Yeah, I know. Every single week you're doing all this zany stuff. They should be working on the budget. They should be working on ways to protect the border. They should be working on ways to, help the Republicans bring down inflation and get Donald Trump's agenda going. They should be working on all this stuff, but they're just sitting around trying to figure out how are we going to sue Donald Trump this week? What are we going to do this week to stop Donald Trump? How are we going to really stick it to him? Donald Trump has all these great things that he wants to accomplish. He wants to protect Americans. He wants to secure the border. He wants to bring down the cost of everything. He wants to put tariffs in place so that tax day, which it's tax day today, is no longer a headache for Americans. He wants to replace tax day with tariff day, and he wants every day to be tariff day. And wouldn't it be great if we had an external revenue service that made more than the internal revenue service, which is exactly what the founding fathers had in mind, because they didn't. If you go to the Constitution, there's no IRS in the Constitution. There's no constitutionally mandated law or order that you pay a portion of your income tax to the federal government. It's not there. It wasn't in the plan. It wasn't designed. It only came later when the Democrats realized they needed money to go along with their power. And so that's what we had implemented. And this is something that we're all reminded of. But look, President Donald Trump, he doesn't want taxes. Nobody likes taxes. President Donald Trump doesn't like taxes. He doesn't want taxes. And he's working hard. He's working harder than anyone to make America rich again so that we can have alternatives to this. But you know what? It's crazy. He was even asked about it. I think I have it here. There was a question he was asked about the taxes and if he was going to end taxes. Oh, here it is. I have it right here. This is Rachel Campos Duffy, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the Fox News host who's married to Sean Duffy, who is the transportation secretary. Listen to this.
President Trump sat down with Fox's Rachel Campos Duffy. Listen to what he had to say when he was asked if tariffs will replace the income tax.
You know, you're the only one that's asked me that. Oh, I deal with all these big financial geniuses. Nobody ever. There is a chance that the money from tariffs could be so great that it would replace. You know, in the old days, about 1870 to 1913, the tariffs were the only form of money.
And that's what he's hoping. Again, he doesn't say yes, they will, but he's like, you know what? It's interesting. That was how it used to be, and that's how I'd love it to be again. Real quick, I do want to dip in because we have Caroline Leavitt live now at the White House.
Celebration currently underway for Holy Week ahead of Easter Sunday.
Oh, and she's talking about Holy Week. The
president signed a Holy Week proclamation, filmed a special presidential video message, and will be hosting a pre-Easter dinner tomorrow night and a White House staff Easter worship service on Thursday. The president and the First Lady are honored to continue the tradition of the White House Easter egg roll, which will take place on the South Lawn next Monday.
I'm very excited about that. I've never been to the Easter egg roll, but I hear it's a lot of fun.
Manufacturing superpower again. Yesterday, there was a monumental announcement by NVIDIA, one of the largest companies in the world. This is just the latest example. For the first time ever.
Is it NVIDIA or NVIDIA? She said NVIDIA. I've always called it NVIDIA. But yes, it was a massive announcement. They're going to bring in $500 billion worth of production. NVIDIA is going to bring in $500 billion worth of manufacturing and production of their computer chips and products, along with, of course, all of the other supply chain materials that come along with it. And that, of course, is, again, just thanks to President Donald Trump and his leadership.
In the great state of Arizona, and AI supercomputers in the great state of Texas. NVIDIA's founder and CEO Jensen Huang touted how the engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States for the first time. This is the Trump effect. This follows trillions in other U.S. investments announced already, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment led by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in artificial intelligence infrastructure. Under President Trump, we're going to produce the cars, the ships, the chips, the airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America.
Cars, ships, chips, minerals,
American
medicines.
On the
make
border,
it all here.
President Trump continues to break records and protect our homeland. According to CBP, Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border for the entire month of March 2025 were lower than the first 2 days of March 2024 under Joe Biden. Incredible law enforcement officers are arresting violent illegal aliens from American communities every day.
Yeah.
Here are a few examples from the latest ICE report, which I received this morning.
Oh, good. I like the
ICE Los Angeles arrested a 54-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of rape by threat, sodomy with a person under 14 years, and kidnapping in San Jose, California. ICE Houston has arrested a 23-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of predatory criminal sexual assault of a child in Cook County, Illinois. ICE Houston arrested a 64-year-old citizen of Honduras convicted of murder in Los Angeles County, California. ICE Chicago arrested a 49-year-old citizen of Guatemala convicted of assault and arson in Prince Williams, Virginia.
And these people are just walking around
here. ICE Denver arrested a 36-year-old citizen of Mexico who is registered as a sex offender and has been convicted of sexual assault of a child in Lake County, Colorado.
And these people are just chilling.
ICE Baltimore arrested a 50-year-old citizen of China convicted of sex trafficking in Bel Air, Maryland. And ICE Boston arrested a 46-year-old citizen of Jamaica convicted of 3 counts of rape of a child and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery of a child under 14 in Boston, Massachusetts.
Again, I'm glad that they're all getting captured. But again, these are the people that are just wandering around the streets. These are the people that are just wandering around that ICE is going after. And this is the reason why Tom Homan and what he's doing are so important. And you've got the Democrats wanting to bring them back to stifle the efforts to remove these folks from our country.
Deportation of Abrego Garcia.
Oh, here we go.
An MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin. And if you didn't see yesterday, a Maryland jury found illegal alien Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez guilty of murdering Rachel Morin in August of 2023. She was a 37-year-old mother of 5 who was jogging in an otherwise safe community northeast of Baltimore when this monster ambushed, strangled, and beat her to death before stuffing her brutalized body in a tunnel drain. The Morin family finally got justice yesterday, but they will never get Rachel back. Our hearts go out to Rachel's family, her 5 children, and her mother, Patty, who has suffered the unimaginable loss of her daughter. In case you missed it last week, President Trump signed a national security presidential memorandum directing federal agencies administering federal land on the border to make land available to the Defense Department in a new national defense area. This followed the president's Day 1 executive order committing his administration to marshal all available resources and authorities to stop the unprecedented flood of illegal aliens into our country and to obtain complete operational control of the borders of the United States of America. Once again, the president is fulfilling another key promise. This new national defense area spans more than 170 miles across our border in New Mexico. But in the coming weeks, this administration will add more than 90 miles in the state of Texas. This national defense area will enhance our ability to detect, interdict, and prosecute the illegal aliens, criminal gangs, and terrorists who were able to invade our country without consequence for the past 4 years under the Biden administration. It will also bolster our defenses against fentanyl and other dangerous narcotics that have been poisoning our communities. With all of this work being done to make America great again, we continue to see a positive response from the American public. A brand new poll published from the Daily Mail and JL Partners this morning found that President Trump's approval rating is at an all-time high.
Look at that. By the way, more people in this country are identifying as MAGA. That's the other thing, too. 71% of Republicans. 71% of Republicans identify as MAGA.
I like your boots, Matt, who is the editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter. Washington Reporter is a new, fast-growing outlet that breaks stories about legislation and interviews leaders in Congress and across the administration. The publication's readership includes the highest levels of business and government. And with that, please kick us off, Matt.
We've interviewed you as well. So, Caroline, thanks so much for having me here on behalf of
I don't know about this.
And
I don't know about
billions of Americans.
I feel like that's a big outlet.
Doing with the new media seat here and making this a more accessible briefing room. I'm curious with Harvard. We saw the Trump administration.
Let's talk about. I was going to get to Harvard.
Around $2 billion, or freezing $2 billion in funds to Harvard because the campus has serious problems with violence and with anti-Semitism. We saw former President Obama, side with Harvard, which rejected the Trump administration's demands. I'm curious, where does the administration see this going with Harvard and with other colleges and universities in America that are refusing to reform in wake of the sort of craziness that we've seen take over some of them?
Thank you, Matt, for being here, and thanks for the question. When it comes to
Good
Harvard,
question, Matt.
The president's position on this is grounded in common sense, in the basic principle that Jewish American students, or students of any faith, should not be illegally harassed and targeted on our nation's college campuses. And we unfortunately saw that illegal discrimination take place on the campus of Harvard. There are countless examples to prove it, particularly with the stunning confession by then Harvard President Claudine Gay, who said that bullying and harassment depended on the context.
Yeah.
The president
She's not the president anymore, by the way.
To the American public, he was not going to tolerate illegal harassment and anti-Semitism taking place in violations of federal law. So the president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding. Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously. All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. I think the president is also begging a good question. More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment.
That's
Why are
my
the American
question.
Taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already? And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
Yeah, and that's one of the things.
Rachel Morin, and, I'm a Maryland man, and I think most Marylanders appreciate what
That's one of the things that's really interesting is that Harvard. I mean, the reason they're saying no to President Donald Trump is because they're like $2 billion, $2 schmillion. We got plenty of cash on hand, and we're just going to price gouge all the people coming in the door anyway. So they're not afraid of losing $2 billion because they are the richest university, I think, in the world. They're the oldest in the entire country. And the amount of land that they own, the amount of tax breaks they get, it's ridiculous how much this country subsidizes Harvard. And then they turn around and they perpetuate anti-Semitism and they give these Palestinians, pro-Palestinian lunatics a platform.
Mind-boggling, the priorities of the modern-day Democrat Party. I think it's atrocious that you have Democrats in Congress on Capitol Hill who swear an oath to protect their constituents and to serve them in Washington, D.C., spending more time defending illegal immigrant gang members than their own constituents and law-abiding American citizens like Rachel Morin. And I saw the president personally on the campaign trail, and I continue to see him in his role as president of the United States, put American families first, reach out to the victims, the families of victims at the hands of illegal immigrant crime. And frankly, the actions and the words of the Democrat Party prove they could not care less about the American public. And maybe if they did, they'd see a bit higher approval ratings.
Oh, just like CNN, which we'll get to too.
Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. To follow up on something that you just said, why do Ivy League schools get so much federal funding?
That's a great question.
It's a very good question.
Oh,
and
it's
a
very
question
great
the
question.
president has obviously raised in his discussions and negotiations with not just Harvard, but also Columbia and many other Ivy League institutions. We have the Anti-Semitism Task Force, which the president promised on. The anti-Semitism task forces across the government, representatives from various federal agencies who meet on a weekly basis to discuss the question that you just raised. And I think a lot of Americans are wondering why their tax dollars are going to these universities when they are not only indoctrinating our nation's students, but also allowing such egregious illegal behavior.
Not only that, but tuition is through the roof. I mean,
deporting American citizens to Central American prisons. Is it legal, or do you need to change the law to do it?
All right, we'll get to that.
It's another question that the president has raised.
All right, real quick, I want to talk about these universities. The thing about the universities and the billions of dollars that they're getting is they're getting that on top of tuition. And for these Ivy League institutions and these universities, you're talking about tuitions of $75,000 per student per year plus. And yes, a lot of students get subsidized by scholarships and grants and things like that, but it's not coming out of the university's pocket. A lot of people are taking out loans to pay these higher institutions, and they've got billions of dollars in the bank, and then we find out they're getting billions on top of it.
It's a legal question that the president is looking into. And he talked about this yesterday when with his meeting with President Bukele in the Oval Office. He would only consider this, if legal, for Americans who are the most violent, egregious, repeat offenders of crime, who nobody in this room wants living in their communities.
And then there's this CHNV thing. President Biden let more than 530,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela into the U.S. with this CHNV program. He did it with the stroke of a pen. And now a judge will not let President Trump undo it.
I feel like Peter Doocy sounds like he has a cold, doesn't he? Maybe it was the bird. Maybe the bird gave him some kind of, maybe he got like bird flu when the bird when the bird flew into his head and he got the bird flu. So yeah, he sounds like he's a little stuffed up or something like that. I do want to monitor this because I do feel like there's going to be some good questions, maybe from Caitlin Collins or something. I do feel like we're going to see some fireworks, but there is something else I wanted to, because look, the interesting thing about Donald Trump is, and he posted this on his Truth Social, he posted, perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is only contingent on acting in the public interest. And President Donald Trump, which, by the way, it's funny, the Fox News put together this thing. He's standing in front of the Harvard banner, which their motto is Veritas, which stands for truth. which is funny because that's also Donald Trump's social media platform. Both Harvard and Donald Trump use the term truth to describe what they do. But only one of them is telling the truth. And President Trump is absolutely right. You have to act in the public interest if you're going to get tax exempt status. You have to act in the public interest. You have to do a service to the community. And having pro-Palestinian protesters take over student organizations and buildings, and what happened in Colombia where they just, they sat out in the yard and pooped for weeks on end. I mean, that's just disgraceful. That has nothing to do with the public interest, with the public good. In fact, it works mostly, especially if you're a Jewish student, against your public good. And Donald Trump says, look, yes, we understand there's freedom of religion in this country. We get it. There's freedom of thought. No one's saying you don't have the freedom of speech to say, I hate Israel, or Palestinians are stinky, or whatever you want to say, bomb Gaza, or Netanyahu's a terrorist. All these things are being said by various different sides. I get all that. It's freedom of speech. You have the right to do it, and we'll all fight for your right to continue to do that as long as possible. But at the same time, we don't have to fund it. There doesn't have to be public funding for this kind of stuff, nor should there be. And that is one of the things that President Donald Trump is most appalled with, and that's one of the things that we all really should be looking at and saying, hey, we're not gonna put up with that anymore.
Ahead of those negotiations as well, what I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. And
yeah.
I also want to thank your press office for releasing that information that you cited up there regarding the ICE arrests over the last couple of days. And I have them right here, but what I might ask is, why not release the same information for those who were deported to El Salvador?
Well, first of all, the information was released by the Department of Homeland Security. The individuals on the flights to El Salvador are foreign terrorists, and those are counterterrorism operations. They are much different than the arrests and final order of removals that you see on a day-to-day basis that law enforcement agents are conducting around the country.
That information was not, to that detail, was not released by DHS, though.
I just told you the reason. It was a counterterrorism operation, a deportation of foreign terrorists, not illegal criminals who have been convicted of heinous crimes living in our American communities. It's two different things. Foreign terrorist, illegal immigrant criminal, two different things, two different definitions. You should look them up. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Does the president support raising the corporate tax rate to pay for all these other tax cuts he wants to see move through Congress?
Look, I've seen this idea proposed. I've heard this idea discussed, but I don't believe the president has made a determination on whether he supports it or not.
And then secondly, do you have any information on the status of Eden Alexander? Hamas says they lost contact with the unit guarding him following an Israeli airstrike earlier today.
I don't have updates. I have not seen that report, but I can certainly check in with our National Security Council. I have spoken to the president about Eden Alexander, and he's made it very clear to our national security team that finding him is a priority, but unfortunately I don't have any updates to share. But it's a very important matter, and certainly we can check in. Sure.
Hi. How concerned is the president that a federal judge could hold a Trump administration official in contempt of court for defying deportation orders?
We are complying with all court orders. So I see what you're trying to do there with that question, but we're very confident that every action taken by this administration is within the confines of the law, and we continue to comply with the court's orders. And you have seen that, and the president made that clear yesterday in the Oval Office with President Bukele.
It's one of those gotcha questions where he's trying to get her to admit that they...
Could you, just going back to El Salvador, could you just explain to us a little bit more about the legal basis on which you may be able to send U.S. citizens to prison there? I know you said that President Trump is looking at it, but can you explain to us a little bit more about how that might be possible?
We're looking at it, and when I have more for you to share, I certainly will. Sure.
Still going off the El Salvador questions.
Everybody loves El Salvador.
Administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador's president said we're not going to do anything with him. So my question is, who is responsible for this man and where he's going to end up?
Well, no. First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America, as many in this room in the Democrat Party seemingly want him to do. Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland, because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member. Not only have we confirmed that, President Bukele yesterday in the Oval Office confirmed that as well. So he went back to his home country, where he will face consequences for his gang affiliation and his engagement in human trafficking. I'm not sure what is so difficult about this for everyone in the media to understand, and it's appalling, truly appalling, that there has been so much time covering this alleged human trafficker and this gang member, MS-13 gang member. It's truly striking to me. Karen.
I love when she starts just. I love when she starts. What do you call it? Just lecturing them.
He was talking
like,
about
you guys are all horrible people.
Work with farmers to retain workers who are in the U.S. illegally, provided that they leave and then come back through what he said would be a legal process. Can you give details on what that would look like? How many workers he's talking about? How long a plan like that would take to implement, and the timeline for more details on getting this actually to implementation?
I can check in with our immigration and our policy team and get you some more details on that, Karen.
And is this something he wants to roll out soon? I mean, he was talking back and forth with Secretary Rollins.
Right.
This is kind of imminent that he wants to do this.
Yeah, look, the president is in constant communication with all of his cabinet secretaries, particularly Secretary Rollins, who has the backs of American farmers and ranchers. It's something that he spoke about with her in the front of all the cameras in the cabinet room, but I'll check in with not only our immigration team, but also with USDA, and we'll get you an answer. Jonathan.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, it's good to see you in here.
You too. The president has long said that it would be an abuse of power for a president to direct prosecutors to investigate him. Last week, President Trump explicitly directed the Justice Department to scrutinize Chris Krebs to see if it can find any evidence of criminal wrongdoing. How is that not an abuse of power to direct the Justice Department to look into an individual, a named individual?
Look, the president signed that executive order. It's the position of the president in this White House that it's well within his authority to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed it. And he signed it, and that's his policy. Jeff, how you doing?
Fine, thanks, Caroline. A follow-up on Harvard. The president floated on Truth Social, I believe, the possibility of removing tax-exempt status. How serious is that threat, and are there other universities he's considering? And then a follow-up question on foreign policy. Can you give us an update on what the...
Why is that guy so quiet? He literally has a microphone right in his face, and I can't hear him.
First, when it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear. They must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students. There were professors who said that he had engaged in discriminatory behavior against Jewish students. Of course, you had the former president of the university saying bullying and harassment depends on the context. You also had an encampment on Harvard Yard that we all saw play out before the cameras. The university failed to impose formal discipline on any students for this anti-Semitic conduct violations, including the occupation of a campus building and the disruption of classes with bullhorns. The president believes Harvard should apologize to its Jewish American students for allowing such egregious behavior. As for the tax-exempt status, I would defer you to the IRS for any updates. I do want to answer your question on Iran, of course. The maximum pressure campaign on Iran continues, but as you know, the president has made it clear he wants to see dialogue and discussion with Iran while making his directive about Iran never being able to obtain a nuclear weapon quite clear. And the president spoke to the Sultan of Oman today, who helped facilitate these talks. I have a readout for all of you. He held a call with the Sultan of Oman today, and he thanked him for hosting the first direct meeting between the United States and Iran and emphasized the need for Iran to end its nuclear program.
All right, I guess, sorry, I get a little mesmerized. I feel like it's fascinating to me to see these people asking the same questions over and over again and thinking they're going to get a different answer. And I guess the problem is every reporter has to try, right? They all have to go in there and say, well, I asked her and she obfuscated. I asked her, she didn't give me a direct answer. They can't just say somebody else asked the question and this was the result. So that's why you hear the same question over and over again. And it's really annoying. It's really annoying. But again, that's what happens when you put all these reporters into a room. Every single reporter wants to ask the question. Every single reporter wants to have their take. Every single reporter is like, we need to be the ones that are going to crack this case. And of course, none of them are going to crack the case because, well, President Donald Trump's not going to, I mean, the answer is not going to change no matter how many times you ask the question. There was one thing that happened yesterday, which was really kind of funny. And it happened after the Bukele press conference. Yesterday, President Bukele, as we've talked about many times now, was in the Oval Office, and he was talking to President Donald Trump, and President Donald Trump was answering questions, and Caitlin Collins was there making a fool of herself once again, and we covered that in depth yesterday. But afterward, Dana Bash on CNN felt it was necessary to go on television and remind their viewers at CNN that CNN does not, contrary to popular belief, does not hate the United States of America.
We have been listening to a lengthy live press conference inside the Oval Office with the leader of El Salvador, Bukele, where we have heard a lot of bits of information, a lot of news nuggets that we want to definitely focus on, a lot of some misinformation as well. But we want to digest all of this right now with our terrific panel here and our reporters. Jeff Zeleny, I want to start with you. You are at the White House. Before I get to you, I just want to say, for the record, since we heard President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country, CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying. I've been here for 32 years, and I see a rhetorical device in him trying to say such.
Look at that. This is incredible. This is a historic moment in broadcasting. CNN, I mean, how bad does your network have to sink? Like, how low do you have to go to stop your broadcast reporting and remind your viewers that you don't actually hate them? I mean, that's what she's doing.
We have been listening to
listen to this. This is it. Here it is right here. She had to stop the broadcast to pause and remind their viewers, whoever's left, we don't hate you.
President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country. CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying.
It doesn't go without saying. That's the problem. It should go without saying. Yes, it should go without saying that any news organization doesn't hate the country where they're reporting it. It should go without saying that any news agency is there not to disrupt the political atmosphere of their country or to make their country a worse place to live. No, they're supposed to be there reporting on what's going on in an unbiased fashion. But CNN doesn't do that. They propagandize, they lie, they misinform the public, they side with the enemies of the United States of America instead of the patriotic heroes in the United States of America who are working to protect her citizens. I mean, this is what's happening. And now Donald Trump calls them out on it, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. We do not hate the United States of America.
For 32 years, and I see a rhetorical device.
I don't see a rhetorical device. I see, you know what? I see a president who finally is calling you out on your stuff, and you guys don't like it.
Our country, CNN does not hate our country.
I mean, I'm shocked they didn't put it on the card. This breaking news: CNN does not hate the country. Listen, I worked for a guy who was kind of annoying, but he did say this one thing. whenever like, he'd come in and say, hey, did you say this on the air, or did this happen, or is this going on behind, like what's going on with this situation? And I started like saying something, he'd always look at me and say, if you're explaining, you're losing. And I feel like that's a good sentence here. If you're explaining, CNN, that you don't hate the United States of America, odds are you hate the United States of America. They had another awkward moment where Jake Tapper and what's her name, the legal woman, I always forget her name. They were chit-chatting, and Jake Tapper was trying his darndest to make her admit that President Donald Trump was wrong about El Salvador and what's going on with these, but it's very difficult when the law is on your side, as Jake Tapper found out on his show earlier today.
And President Trump and President Bukele made it clear that Abrego Garcia will not be returned to the United States, despite this U.S. Supreme Court ruling saying that Trump had to facilitate his return. So are they just ignoring a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, or is the fact that the ruling was so mushy, in your words,
yes,
giving him an opening?
It's a technical term I learned in law school, Jake. Mushy, look, they're working within the ambiguity that the Supreme Court justices gave them. They did not order the administration to return him to the United States. They said that they need to facilitate this return. They could have said, we order him returned, but they didn't do that. So you heard the Attorney General. She was being very careful in the Oval Office when she was asked, would you help? She says, of course we'd provide a plane, right? Thereby facilitating whatever El Salvador is doing. The Supreme Court appeared to defer to the executive branch, given that this is an international matter. And you see, yes, it does look a little bit like a semantic game, but they are playing within the bounds of what the Supreme Court ruled. So no, they are not defying this order.
Yeah, they're not. Look at that. CNN has to openly admit that they're not defying the court order, because the court order was to facilitate the return. And Pam Bondi goes, all right, if he's released by El Salvador, we'll send a plane. That's facilitating. If El Salvador releases him and says, we want him back in the United States of America, we'll send a plane. And we may even let it land. But the fact of the matter is that the Supreme Court didn't offer him, or didn't demand that Donald Trump or the White House or any other administration do anything other than facilitate his return. So is it mushy? Is it ambiguous? You call it whatever you want to call it. But Donald Trump's reaction to it, and his administration's reaction to it, and what they're doing in the case of what's his name, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is 100% abiding by the court's order. It's not his fault that the court's order was mushy, which only on CNN would you have an attorney use the term mushy to describe a Supreme Court decision. Maybe on MSNBC. Maybe on MSNBC as well. Listen, don't forget to subscribe to this broadcast. Subscribe to our channel and our podcast, because every single day we're bringing you all the information you need. And we are going to continue to do that Monday through Friday, and maybe even on Saturday and Sunday. You never know. I'm lucky enough to be working just like Donald Trump does from his home. Whether it's the White House or Mar-a-Lago, I work here at Mar-a-Lago every single day, and I put together what I believe to be one of the finest podcasts, and apparently a lot of other people do, because we're now 29th on the podcast charts, which I'm thrilled about, and I thank you all for your support. Make sure you subscribe, set the notifications, tell whatever podcast platform you're listening to deliver this podcast to you every single day, because you love it. You like it, you love it, you want some more of it. To quote the great Tim McGraw, I like it. I think that was Tim McGraw. And we'll bring it to you. But like I said, you've got to click that button and we'll do the rest. In the meantime, don't forget to share this with all of your friends and family. If you have like-minded individuals in your household or in your atmosphere, in your orbit, who are not yet listening to the show or watching us or following us, make sure you mention it to them, because they're going to love it. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to learn from it. They're going to be hopefully brought over into the fold. We need to make as many Kayetriots as we can, because this battle continues to rage. We have to fight every single day. We've got to stay vigilant. We've got to stay informed. We've got to stay dedicated, so that whenever the battle ensues, we'll be ready to not just fight, but also to save the Republic.